I step onto my porch just as the sun begins its slow descent, painting the sky in streaks of gold and crimson. The scent of tilled earth and fresh hay lingers in the air, mixing with the distant sound of cows lowing from the pasture. This land, my land, has been in my family for generations, a symbol of hard work and resilience. My grandfather fought tooth and nail to keep it, and I damn sure plan to do the same. But lately, something feels off. I lean against the wooden railing, eyes scanning the rows of crops stretching beyond the fence. Corn, tomatoes, strawberries, years of labor thriving under my care. Yet the last few mornings I've noticed patches where produce has gone missing. Not just a few tomatoes here and there, whole sections wiped clean. At first I thought it was animals. Raccoons, maybe. But raccoons don't carry reusable shopping bags. A rustling sound pulls my attention toward the far end of the field. A shadow moves between the stalks. My pulse quickens. I know every inch of this farm, and I know for damn sure that ain't one of my workers. I push off the porch, striding toward the disturbance, boots crunching against the gravel path. By the time I reach the fence, the intruder is gone. Only trampled dirt and a few half-picked vines remain. Something is definitely wrong. The next morning, I drive into town for supplies. As I step into the general store, the hum of conversation dims. Eyes flick toward me. Some nod in acknowledgement. Others quickly look away. It's nothing new. I'm one of the only Black landowners in this county, and that alone is enough to make some folks uncomfortable. I grab a bag of feed and head to the counter, where old Mr. Clarkson rings me up. He clears his throat, shifting uneasily. You hear about the new HOA over in Willow Creek? I frown. Willow Creek, the subdivision that sprouted up just a mile down the road. A fancy, gated community filled with folks who, until recently, wouldn't have set foot this deep in the countryside. What about it? I ask. Clarkson hesitates, then leans in. They've been making a fuss about your farm, complaining that it spoils the aesthetic of their neighborhood. My jaw tightens. My farm was here long before they were. He nods. I know that, but they're saying the smell, the livestock, even the tractors, you're lowering property values. I exhale slowly, controlling the simmering anger beneath my skin. I've dealt with this kind of thing before, but something tells me this isn't just about aesthetics. I pay for my things and head out, my mind racing. A few stolen crops. A fancy new HOA with an entitled attitude. And now, whispers about my farm being a problem. Something tells me this is just the beginning. The next morning, I wake up to the sound of rustling near my orchard. It's faint but deliberate, the kind of movement that doesn't belong to the wind or the wildlife. I throw on my boots and step outside, my breath visible in the crisp morning air. The sun is barely up, but the damage is already done. Rows of apple trees, stripped clean. Peaches missing from the lower branches. Footprints in the damp soil, leading straight toward the fence separating my farm from Willow Creek. I kneel, running my fingers over the trampled earth. Someone's been helping themselves. Again. I clench my jaw. This isn't just trespassing. This is theft. Later that day, I drive over to the Willow Creek community to get some answers. The neighborhood is everything you'd expect from an overpriced HOA. Perfectly trimmed hedges, identical brick houses, and an eerie silence that makes it feel more like a showroom than a real place where people live. I park outside the clubhouse, where a group of women in pastel cardigans and oversized sunglasses sit at a patio table, sipping iced tea. Their laughter fades the moment they see me. A tall, sharp-featured woman stands. She looks me up and down, like she's assessing whether I belong here. Can we help you? Her voice is tight, controlled. I nod. Yeah. Name's Elijah Carter. I own the farm next door. I pause, watching their expressions shift. Recognition. Annoyance. Disdain. I've had some issues with trespassers. Crops going missing. Thought I'd check if anyone's seen anything. The woman doesn't blink. Oh, well. We wouldn't know anything about that, she says, her tone dripping with false politeness. But it's understandable. An open farm like that? People might assume it's community property. I stare at her. Community property? She shrugs, as if the idea of taking from my land isn't even worth discussing. Well, our residents enjoy fresh, organic produce. And your farm is right there, practically an extension of our neighborhood. I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding. My fingers tighten at my sides. It's not a misunderstanding. It's theft. Her smile doesn't waver, but there's an edge to it now. I think you're overreacting, Mr. Carter. Besides, a little goodwill goes a long way. Your farm sticks out around here. People talk. I'd hate for there to be unnecessary complaints. There it is. A warning wrapped in a threat. I exhale slowly, forcing myself to stay calm. I could argue. I could shout. But I know her type. Entitled, manipulative, the kind of person who sees my presence as an inconvenience. Instead, I nod once. Good to know. As I turn to leave, she calls after me. Oh, and Mr. Carter? I glance back. She smiles. Welcome to the neighborhood. Something tells me this is far from over. The next time it happens, I catch them in the act. It's just past dawn when I hear rustling near my vegetable patch. I grab my phone and slip out the back door, moving quickly but quietly. As I round the corner, I spot them, 3 women in yoga pants and sun hats, baskets in hand, plucking my tomatoes like they're at a farmer's market. My blood boils. Excuse me, I call out, striding toward them. What the hell do you think you're doing? They freeze, their faces going pale before they exchange glances, as if debating whether to run. Then, one of them, a thin, blonde woman with a smug expression, straightens up and scoffs. Oh, relax, she says, waving me off. It's just a few tomatoes. I step closer. That's not the point. You're trespassing. You're stealing. The second woman, a brunette, rolls her eyes. We were going to leave some money at the clubhouse later. Consider it a donation. A donation? Like my farm is some kind of charity for rich suburbanites? I glance down at their baskets, full of tomatoes, cucumbers, even a few ears of corn. You think leaving a few bucks justifies trespassing onto my property and taking whatever you want? The blonde sighs, clearly growing impatient. Oh, please. Your farm is right next to our neighborhood. It's not like you're going to miss a few vegetables. That's when it clicks. They don't see me as the rightful owner of this land. They see me as someone they can take from without consequence. I pull out my phone and start recording. So, just to be clear, you're admitting to stealing from my farm? Their expressions shift. The brunette snatches her sunglasses off her face. Are you recording us? That's illegal. It's my property, I say coolly. I have every right to record trespassers. The blonde crosses her arms. Oh, you're one of those people. Always looking for a reason to play the victim. I exhale sharply, forcing myself to stay calm. Get off my land. Now. The third woman, who's been silent up until now, finally speaks. Let's just go, Lisa. She tugs at the blonde's sleeve. We don't need the trouble. Lisa scoffs but turns on her heel, leading the others back toward the subdivision. This is why people complain about you. She throws over her shoulder. You're not exactly neighborly. I watch them go, fury simmering beneath my skin. This isn't just about vegetables. This is about respect, or the lack of it. That evening, I install security cameras. Not cheap ones either, high-definition, night vision, motion detection. If they come back, I'll have undeniable proof. I also make a few calls. My cousin, Malik, is a lawyer. My best friend, Javier, is a local journalist who loves exposing HOA corruption. If these people think they can push me around, they have another thing coming. But the real battle begins when I get a letter in the mail. 2 days later, I find an official-looking envelope in my mailbox. The return address? Willow Creek Homeowners Association. I open it and scan the contents. Notice of community concerns. Dear Mr. Carter, it has come to our attention that your farming practices have become a nuisance to the residents of Willow Creek. The odors, machinery noise, and unsightly agricultural equipment diminish the property values and overall aesthetic of our community. We strongly urge you to reconsider your farming operations and take the necessary steps to mitigate these concerns. Failure to comply may result in further action. Sincerely, Margaret Ellison, President, Willow Creek HOA. I let out a bitter laugh. So this is their move. They're trying to paint me as a problem, as if my farm, my family's legacy, is some kind of blight on their pristine neighborhood. I march inside and grab my phone. I dial Javier first. Hey, you still looking for a story on HOA overreach? Then I call Malik. It's time to fight back. 2 days later, I receive a formal invitation, if you can call it that, to a Willow Creek HOA emergency meeting. The subject line? Concerns regarding adjacent property owner Elijah Carter. They're not even trying to be subtle. I arrive at the community clubhouse just before sunset. The place is packed, residents in polo shirts and sun hats, sipping wine and murmuring amongst themselves. The air is thick with entitlement. A long conference table sits at the front of the room, where the HOA board members preside like royalty. And at the center of it all, Margaret Ellison. She looks exactly as I remember, sharp features, perfectly styled hair, and the smug confidence of someone who's never been told no. She watches me approach with a polite but icy smile, motioning toward an empty chair. Mr. Carter, she says smoothly, thank you for joining us. I don't sit. Margaret folds her hands. We called this meeting to discuss a growing concern among our residents. As you may know, Willow Creek prides itself on being a well-maintained, aesthetically pleasing community. Unfortunately, certain external factors are beginning to affect our property values. I cross my arms. You mean my farm? A murmur ripples through the room. Margaret gives a measured smile. We understand that farming is important to you. However, the constant noise from your equipment, the odor from your livestock, and, most notably, the unauthorized access to your crops have all caused distress among our residents. I raise an eyebrow. Unauthorized access? You mean trespassing? She waves a dismissive hand. Let's not get caught up in semantics. The point is, many of our residents assumed your farmland was an extension of the community. A natural resource, if you will. If you were more accommodating, we wouldn't be in this situation. I grit my teeth. Accommodating? You mean letting your people steal from me? Margaret chuckles softly, as if I'm a foolish child. No one's stealing, Mr. Carter. In fact, several residents have expressed willingness to offer financial compensation. I pull my phone from my pocket and tap the screen. The projector behind her lights up, displaying crystal-clear security footage. Margaret's smile stiffens. The room falls silent as the video plays. First, the 3 women from before, baskets full of my produce. Then more residents, men, women, even teenagers hopping the fence, stuffing grocery bags with my crops. There's no mistaking it. No room for misunderstandings. And then the final clip. Margaret herself, standing outside the clubhouse, speaking with a group of residents. If he makes a fuss, we'll handle it. He's just being difficult. Honestly, we're doing him a favor. He should be grateful we even want his food. A stunned silence blankets the room. Margaret stiffens. Where did you get that footage? I installed security cameras after your people started treating my farm like a Whole Foods, I say coolly. And now I have legal proof of trespassing, theft, and even discrimination. Margaret's jaw tightens, but she's not done yet. She lets out a short laugh, shaking her head. Mr. Carter, you may have recordings, but let's be honest. Are you really going to take this to court? Do you have the resources? The time? The connections? I smile. You're right. I don't need to take this to court. I nod toward the back of the room. The doors swing open. In walks Javier Rodriguez, my journalist friend, camera in hand. Beside him, Mal. The doors swing open. In walks Javier Rodriguez, my journalist friend, camera in hand. Beside him, Malik Carter, my cousin, and one of the best civil rights attorneys in the state. And just behind them, Officer Dana Caldwell, a no-nonsense sheriff's deputy who doesn't play around when it comes to property crime. Margaret's face drains of color. Mr. Carter, Javier says loud enough for the whole room to hear, adjusting his camera lens. Would you like to repeat what you just showed us for the record? This is going live. The room erupts into whispers. Margaret shoots to her feet. You can't just bring cameras in here. This is private. Wrong. Malik cuts in, his voice smooth and commanding. This meeting was announced as an official HOA hearing, open to all Willow Creek residents. That makes it public record. And I'd be very careful about trying to suppress that. Margaret's nostrils flare, but before she can spit out whatever excuse she's scrambling for, Officer Caldwell steps forward, tipping her hat. I've been reviewing the footage Mr. Carter provided. That's a lot of trespassing. A lot of theft. She eyes Margaret. And if I'm not mistaken, you just admitted on camera that you knew about it and condoned it. The murmurs in the room grow louder. A man near the front, one of Margaret's closest allies, if I remember correctly, leans forward, suddenly concerned. Wait, so you knew people were stealing from his farm? Margaret stammers, her composure slipping for the first time. Oh, don't be ridiculous. This is all being taken out of context. You were on video encouraging it, Javier points out, zooming in on her flustered expression. This is definitely going to make headlines. Margaret whips around, searching the crowd for support. But the residents, many of whom clearly had no idea how deep this went, are whispering amongst themselves, their expressions ranging from shocked to outraged. I see it in their faces. The realization. They weren't just following Margaret's lead. They were used by her. I never meant for this to get out of hand. Margaret tries again, voice shaking. I was just trying to create a sense of community. Malik steps forward, his presence towering. By stealing from a black farmer and weaponizing the HOA against him. He tilts his head. You do realize that, given the racial implications here, we have grounds for a discrimination lawsuit? A few gasps ripple through the crowd. Margaret's mask finally cracks. Her hands clench at her sides, her lips curling in frustration. Oh, for God's sake. This has nothing to do with race. If he weren't so territorial, none of this would be happening. I raise an eyebrow. Territorial? You mean protecting my land? The one I own. You're right next to Willow Creek, she snaps. Your farm sticks out. The noise, the smell, it lowers property values. You should have expected that people would start treating it as part of the neighborhood. Silence. Margaret realizes her mistake the second the words leave her mouth. She'd just admitted, on record, that she never saw my farm as mine. She saw it as something they had the right to take from. A few residents step away from her, as if physically distancing themselves from the scandal. Officer Caldwell clears her throat. Well, that settles it. Mr. Carter, would you like to press charges? Margaret flinches. Charges? What? No. There's no need for that. Oh, there definitely is, I say, locking eyes with her. Because, unlike you, I believe in consequences. Margaret turns to the board members. You're not seriously going to let him do this, are you? One of the men, the same one who questioned her earlier, slowly shakes his head. Margaret, I think you've done enough. Panic floods her face. No, you don't understand. This is my community. I built this place. You can't just turn on me. But they already have. A woman near the back crosses her arms. My kids were in that video. They could be charged with trespassing because of you. Another man mutters, I had no idea she was lying to us this whole time. Margaret spins in circles, trying to regain control of the room, but it's too late. The very people she ruled over are abandoning her. Then, the final blow. Javier smirks. Oh, and just so you know, we pulled property records. Your house? It's technically within 50 feet of Elijah's land. He turns to me, which means, legally speaking, he can put up any kind of fencing he wants. Margaret's face twists in horror. You wouldn't. I fold my arms. Margaret Ellison is still standing at the front of the room, but she no longer looks like the queen of Willow Creek. Her once perfect posture has collapsed into a slouch. Her lips tremble as she takes in the faces around her, people who once hung on her every word now watching her with suspicion, disappointment, even disgust. The weight of it all seems to press down on her shoulders. And then, Officer Caldwell speaks. Margaret Ellison, You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit theft, criminal trespassing, and harassment. The room erupts. Gasps, whispers, a few stunned exclamations. Margaret's face twists in horror. "You can't be serious," she hisses. "This is ridiculous. I'm the victim here." Officer Caldwell doesn't budge. "You manipulated residents into committing crimes. You actively encouraged trespassing and theft. And you used your position as HOA president to intimidate a legal property owner." She pulls out a pair of cuffs. "Turn around." Margaret's gaze darts to the HOA board. "Do something." But the board members shift uncomfortably, avoiding her eyes. It's clear they've already made their decision. She's on her own. "No," she says, voice shaking. "No, you can't do this to me." I take a step closer, leveling my gaze at her. "You did this to yourself." Her mouth opens, but no words come. Caldwell grips her arm and guides her toward the door. As she passes the residents, some step back. Others whisper. By the time she's gone, silence settles over the room. Then, a voice from the crowd. "We really let this happen, didn't we?" It's the man who first questioned Margaret, his face tight with regret. Around him, others nod, shifting uncomfortably. A woman near the front sighs. "I never thought of myself as that kind of person, but I just went along with it. I didn't think about how wrong it was." Javier turns his camera toward me. "Elijah, how does it feel, finally getting justice?" I exhale, glancing toward the door where Margaret was taken away. "It's not just about me," I say. "It's about people like me, people who get dismissed, pushed aside, treated like we don't belong." I let my gaze sweep across the room. All of you had a choice. Some of you made the wrong one. Shame flickers in their eyes. But you have another choice now. I continue. What kind of people do you want to be moving forward? The weight of my words lingers. And then, something I don't expect. A woman, one of the residents who trespassed on my land, steps forward. Her face is pale, her hands twisting together. I want to apologize," she says softly. "I thought it was harmless. I never considered how wrong it was. And I know an apology isn't enough. But I'm sorry." More people step forward. Some mumble apologies. Others just nod, acknowledging the truth. It's not everything. It doesn't erase what happened. But it's a start. 1 month later. The fence is taller now. Stronger. I made sure of that. But something else has changed, too. I see Willow Creek residents at the local market now, actually buying my produce instead of sneaking onto my land. Some have even asked about volunteering, learning about farming firsthand. Margaret? She lost everything. The HOA removed her as president and sued her for misconduct. The police pressed charges. Even the residents she manipulated turned their backs on her. I heard she had to sell her house. Justice was served. And as I stand at the edge of my land, looking over the fields I fought to protect, I feel it. Peace.